Ole Miss faces a season-defining game versus Oklahoma on Saturday, period.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today, we dive into the pivotal matchup as the Rebels take on the Oklahoma Sooners this Saturday. It's the must-win game for the Rebels, and the team's margin for error has completely evaporated. We'll be joined by Jay Smith of Locked On Sooners to preview the game and discuss the stakes for both teams heading into this crucial weekend. This is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Today's episode is going to be brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. With the way that Oklahoma has struggled this season, it's at least difficult to put into focus exactly how big of a football game this is for Ole Miss. Ole Miss's margin for error is gone after their just inexplicable loss to the Kentucky Wildcats a couple of weeks back and their overtime loss against LSU over the week or 2 weeks ago. Ole Miss absolutely must win this game. Now, it doesn't matter by how much. It doesn't matter if this is a cover. It doesn't matter anything like that. It matters that Ole Miss wins the game, because if Ole Miss wins out and Georgia keeps doing what they're doing and they're steamrolling like we all imagine, Ole Miss is going to make the playoffs just by winning 10. That will be the margin. With a victory over Georgia, Ole Miss would be completely in the playoffs. There's nobody that can even tell me otherwise in that situation. Now, I'm sure Ole Miss fans wouldn't like some style points from time to time, but I don't think they're necessary. And maybe this is the game that Lane Kiffin gets that offense going. Maybe this is that game that Jaxson Dart looks like the Jaxson Dart that we were all expecting going into the season. Maybe this is the game that the running back room has some semblance of a rotation instead of a mix and match that is happening up in the backfield. Maybe the offensive line, they switch things around and do what they have to do, and it just kind of works. Maybe that defense does exactly what we expect them to do. Maybe this game is just a big game that Ole Miss walks out of there, 45-14 victory over the Oklahoma Sooners, which honestly would not surprise me. In fact, right now, my gut is that Ole Miss is going to kind of get right this game. But Oklahoma is Oklahoma, and it scares me. It genuinely does. When you look at the blue chip ratio, I just did air quotes there, Oklahoma's roster is like 60 to 70% 4- and 5-star players. They have good players on the team. They have the ability to rise up. Why they haven't to this point and why this offense is as atrocious as it's been, we're going to find out in just a few minutes when Jay Smith comes on the program. But Ole Miss has a chance to handle itself and get right before another crucial road game at the Arkansas Razorbacks, and then that Georgia game on the schedule. The next 3 games of this season is going to determine whether or not it's a success or a failure. Period. There's no way that you can get around that. And with Oklahoma coming in with all the questions they have, it'll be interesting to sit down in Thunderdome and talk with Jay Smith about what exactly is going on in Norman right now. There's no history between these teams. It is hard to, fake anger at Oklahoma because there is no history. There's literally, they haven't affected one another their whole time. There's a College World Series, a national championship series that Ole Miss fans can swing back on animosity. And there's an Independence Bowl from 25 years ago. That's the history. Oklahoma also knocked Ole Miss out of the NCAA basketball tournament the last time they went. I guess you can add that as well. But that's essentially it. These two programs have not crossed paths very often. And Oklahoma is a fantastic program. It just genuinely is. And Oklahoma, I think, being a state as small as it is, to be as powerful and as mighty as they have traditionally been in football, I mean, it says a lot. That kind of says what Ole Miss is trying to be. So we'll see how exactly that goes. Anyway, let's go into Thunderdome and talk to Jay Smith of Locked On Sooners. Let's go. We are back in Thunderdome with Jay Smith, the co-host of Locked On Sooners with John Williams, who could not join us today. You know, Jay, I just need to know, honestly, I was telling people on my show all week, I genuinely like Oklahoma. I have no animosity towards Oklahoma whatsoever. So ease my mind. What happened to Oklahoma this year?
Everything did not line up the way that we hoped. When you lose 5 wide receivers and you go through like an assembly line of turnover on your offensive line from injuries, because you get both of your offensive tackles drafted in the one in the first round, one in the 7th. You have a few of them transfer that probably should have transferred 2 years ago, but you were being nice. You didn't pull a Coach Prime and kick everybody out. You decide to give everybody a chance, and then you have to refresh that with a bunch of young players. So young offensive line, 5 wide receivers go down, and then you start your true sophomore quarterback. Everything bad just lined up all at once on one side of the ball. Defensively, we're not bad. It's just the defense can't be as good as it can be because the offense keeps putting it in the worst situations possible.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that people can take away from this ball game. Now, Oklahoma's offense this year, if you look at most major stats that involve the offensive line, they are south of 100. Yep. Even sacks and all of that stuff. And with Ole Miss being at the very top of that list and second in the country on defense, you have to figure that if Ole Miss scores 24 points in this game, it's night-night. So you have to –
24 is too much. 17.
17? Because if you think about that, Brent Venables would probably want to have a game plan similar to what Kentucky did against Ole Miss and try to keep the ball for 40, 45 minutes of the game and hold on and wait for Ole Miss's offense to get greedy and make a mistake, and you can kind of take advantage of that. But this is what I noticed against South Carolina, and I don't know if Oklahoma fans noticed it or not, but Seth Luttrell was out there trying to run tempo with the offense exactly like that. He was trying to do this tempo stuff. And if you do that against Ole Miss, they're going to score 50 in that game. They just are. I don't care how good your defense is. Joe John Finley is from the Jeff Lebby tree. He's followed Jeff Lebby all over his career. I figure that Oklahoma is at least going to try to do some of the stuff that Jeff Lebby would have done at Oklahoma. You're going to see hitches. You're going to see bubbles. You're going to see screens. You're going to do what you can to protect that offensive line. But he's also probably going to run tempo. I think that this game, Jay, honestly, is a culture game. This is about winning the next game more than it is winning this game.
Yeah, it kind of feels that way too. For Oklahoma, the big thing is when you replace your offensive coordinator, sometimes you kind of wonder what the locker room feels from that. Is it a sigh of relief? Do they feel hurt that they got their coach fired? What kind of the pulse is from that room? And honestly, that's what we're going to find out. Now, traditionally, when a team makes a big change from staff, they usually come out and play a lot different than they did the weeks before, because that's usually sparks a new energy. That's now what we're trying to anticipate and see how this team responds to a new play caller. And it's fair to assess that. Joe John Finley followed Jeff Lebby. He was there with Lane Kiffin. And so, tempo is something that could potentially be in there. Or they get smart and do what they can to protect this offensive line and, take their time, find ways to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly and just pace themselves. We'll see if that's actually the game plan.
Yeah, it should be really interesting what is going on there. Like I said, Joe John Finley and Jeff Lebby, that connection, I've kind of been hung up on that all week. Mm-hmm. I just genuinely think the offense for Oklahoma, even though they're going to call it the same way, Seth Luttrell was much more air raidy than it was that system. And I think that he's going to get back to a little bit of what they know. And you're going to see Oklahoma try to run the ball physical. They might not be successful because it's hard to run the ball on the Ole Miss defense. But I do think that culturally they're going to try and get in there. They're going to try and run the ball. They're going to do the screens and stuff like that. Because I just think that's what makes him comfortable. And honestly, that plays into Ole Miss's hands, but it might be the best situation for Oklahoma down the road if they want to win 6, 7, 8 ball games.
No, I totally agree. The Sooners have the physical players to do it. We have the size. I mean, offensive line wise, we were averaging like 315 pounds. So we have big bodies. It's now all about going out there and physically pushing people around and making it happen. And for me, I just need to see them do as much as possible to get away from Walter Nolan. I consider him the best player in the country, even at the defensive line. Dude is legit. And we know that he's going to get drafted this year. Thank goodness. I'm sorry for you guys, but thank goodness for us that we won't see him in Norman next year. But overall, your defensive line is really, really good. I mean, the defense itself is good. The bigger thing for us is not only when it comes to protecting Jaxson Arnold or if Michael Hawkins comes back in, the biggest thing is protecting the ball. I need them to not turn the ball over, which has been a problem the last few games. Well, actually this season on offense. Defense will go out there. They'll cause turnovers. We had one of the higher turnover margins up until like the last 2 weeks where we started giving the ball right back. So if we're going to see any type of success, keeping the ball is going to be most critical. And then taking it away. That's the one thing our defense is really good at, taking the ball away. We're going to have to lean in on that very heavy.
If you look at the South Carolina score and everybody sees that 35-9 and they're like, wow, South Carolina really handed it. Well, if you take away that disaster 6 minutes that Michael Hawkins had at the beginning of the game, it was 14-9. It was a good low scoring football game. And I think that Ole Miss fans need to keep that in mind. It was a true freshman having a true freshman game is the reason that game happened.
And I told our fans the same thing. I said, look, when Michael Hawkins goes in here, you're going to have to give him some grace. You're going to understand there's going to be a lot of true freshman moments. And then you may see some senior moments where he just steps up and does something big. He had a lot of true freshman moments there. And Jaxson Arnold had that against Tennessee. We force a fumble. What happens? He gives it right back. We force a fumble. What happens? He gives it right back. Luckily, that game only finished at 25 to 9 or 10 or whatever that score was. I can't even remember at this point. But the South Carolina game, that was done within the first 3 minutes of the game. It's 21-0. It's just awful. That entire 6 minutes was just so painful. And now that Seth Luttrell is no longer with the team and calling plays, I'm hoping that we do things to scheme the offensive line a little bit of extra time while also giving the quarterback the opportunity to get rid of the ball as quick as possible. I think there's opportunity there, but that's going to be the only way that we're going to see success and not get destroyed because Ole Miss, your defensive line is pretty good.
Thanks for tuning in to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast and the Locked On Sooners podcast. We're sitting here talking about the game this Saturday. Lots of stuff to get into, including players to watch and things like that whenever we come back. Stick around. Hey, NFL fans, you can start your season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Ole Miss is currently favored by 20.5 points against the Oklahoma Sooners, which is absolutely weird. Despite the under-over just being at 48.5 points for this game, this is kind of like a 34-14, 35-14 type Ole Miss victory of a game. And honestly, that might make a little bit of a sense. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, we're back in Thunderdome. Jay Smith from Locked On Sooners here. I'm Steven Willis from Locked On Ole Miss. And let's get into some players to watch in this game. And I've seen some rumors, and there's a ton of rumors right now floating around. I mean, your MASH list is, I think I made a joke on the show a couple weeks ago. It was like a casualty list from the Battle of Antietam with as many players that are hurt. It's crazy. And I saw that Gavin Sawchuk might be the next victim. What is the story with him?
Yeah, Brent Venables mentioned on his most recent press conference that Gavin Sawchuk was going to be available to play against South Carolina, then strained his quad. before the game. So it appears that there's a possibility he's going to end up on this availability report. And you're recording this right before it, but you'll see the first availability report. It'll be posted all over the interwebs, and there's a chance he'll be on there. Hopefully we'll see Deon Burks down from questionable to probable. He was dressed out to play in the South Carolina game, and he was moving around. It looked like he was doing good, but he's been dealing with a deep thigh bruise, I guess you could say. Something says soft tissue injury, and to me, that sounds like a deep thigh bruise if he's been gone this long. And that's one of those injuries where you don't really see it, but you feel it. And I have a buddy, and I talked about this on my channel, on my channel on Fair Sports, and I have a friend of mine whose son plays rugby, and he had a deep thigh bruise. And for him, he could run north and south, no problem. But the minute he planted his foot, he collapsed. So he's like, I can play the game, I just can't cut. I just have to run north and south. And hopefully it doesn't hurt when I'm going. So with the shiftiness of a Deon Burks, he needs to have the explosion on his cuts as well as his north and south. So hopefully he is getting better and he's down to probable. If he's probable, I sense he'll end up playing this game, which will be a huge lift for the Sooners going up against Ole Miss.
It will. And Trey Amos, who is a very good cornerback on Ole Miss's team, Deon Burks and Trey Amos, that would probably be a nice little matchup. Who's the second wide receiver on Oklahoma's roster that they need to pay attention to?
Well, lucky for Ole Miss, the other 4 top wide receivers are not going to play in this game. As Andrew Anthony had knee surgery again, had to clean up some scar tissue. It sounds like he's one of those kids that scars when you have surgery. So towards ACL against Texas last year, came back a little earlier, but it seemed like he was scarring up, so he had to have another procedure to clean things up. He won't play. Nick Anderson is still a few weeks out. Jalil Farouk still a few weeks out. Jane Gibson's done for the year since fall camp. He'll be back next fall. So the next one really in line to look out for is J.J. Hester. He's been one of the more consistent wide receivers, and I say that as in he's had some drop problems, but at the same time he's also caught some big plays. 6'4", 200-pound wide receiver. He runs a 4.4 40 whenever the ball is thrown to him deep. You got him, and then you got Brendan Thompson, who caught a deep pass against South Carolina to give a little bit of a spark. 5'9", 5'9" wide receiver, about 190. He is also he runs like a 10-2 in the 100. So he's really fast. So I anticipate we'll try to launch some passes deep, get in there, quick 3-step drop, boom, and just throw it in the air and let the wide receivers run underneath it. I do sense we'll see more of that in this game because Jaxson Arnold has appeared to get more comfortable with doing that. So with Brendan Thompson, J.J. Hester, that's your ones. And then you've got Jacob Jordan, the true freshman. He's a walk-on, and he does a really good job of finding small pockets to get himself open to where the defense isn't too much around him, so Jaxson Arnold can kind of dump it to him. And then you got one last person, true freshman, Zion Kearney. He's a bigger receiver at 6'1", 200 pounds. He's one that I'm hoping we see a lot more of. He's got nice size, and he has the capabilities of being a number 1. We just got to get to that point of him playing like that. And I think if he plays over the next few weeks, in which I hope he does, he'll have that opportunity to cement himself as a true threat going into next season.
On the Ole Miss side of the ball, I mean, obviously Jackson Dart, everybody knows about that, and everybody knows about Trey Harris, and that's going to be the focal point of the offense. But I think the major thing to watch for is how Ole Miss distributes their running back carries. Ulysses Bentley ran for over 100 yards against LSU. Henry Parrish had 2 weeks to get healthy. He was kind of beat up in the game as well, so the running game could look significantly different. And the question that Ole Miss fans are looking for is the usage in the middle of the field with Caden Prieskorn and Daquan Wright, and even moving potentially Juice Wells into the slot or Caden Lee. If that would happen, it could potentially open up that offense. And listen, Oklahoma has a legit defense. They're second in the country in sacks or something like that with 27. And Danny Stutzman's a really good player in the middle. And I think Billy Bowman is on the back end of the defense.
Him and Jackson Dart know each other very well. I got to interview Dart at SEC Media Days, and they were going back and forth picking at each other. And I asked Dart if he was ready for him. He's like, oh, yeah, we like to banter each other. So I'm pretty excited to see that matchup.
Yeah, and they probably know each other because Jackson Dart visited Oklahoma. It was Oklahoma and Ole Miss for his transfer period. So they probably actually, who knows? Billy Bowman might have showed him around Norman. Who knows? But
fair point.
Yeah. Those are really big players offensively, but I think the defensive line against Oklahoma's offensive line are going to be the story of this game. So if you 100%. Want to look at it, Look at it. Ole Miss, I think they're 20.5-point favorites at the moment, which is absolutely unreal that Ole Miss is a 20.5-point favorite over Oklahoma, even thinking about what we were coming into the season as. And the over-under is only like at 48.5. So they think the game is a 35-14, 34-14 type ball game.
Yep.
I genuinely think that if Ole Miss's defense plays the way that they can play, especially that front seven, which is really, really good, I don't see how Oklahoma scores 17 or 14 points in that situation.
We're all in the same boat. Everybody at Oklahoma thinks the exact same thing. We're curious to see if this team can actually score points right now. We've just not done a very good job of it over the last 2 weeks. We've scored, 12 points in the last 2 games combined since the Auburn win on the road. It's just not been good. And so with that defensive front, yes, I'm concerned. I think South Carolina has one of the best defensive fronts in college football, especially at the edge. You know, I think people really sleep on how good they are defensively just because of some of the offensive woes that they have a tendency of having. For us, the big thing is going to be not only double teaming those big defensive linemen you all have, but getting rid of the ball quickly. If we can get rid of the ball quickly, I think we have a chance of putting up points. The question is, can we get rid of the ball quickly? And until we actually see it in action, nobody's going to believe it. Can we? I mean, we were able to do some stuff on Auburn at some point, but the question is going to be just how dedicated will Ole Miss be from not only the opening snap, but through the fourth quarter of trying to demolish the offensive line. If they're trying to demolish the offensive line the entire time, the motivation is there and you start to go into your 3 deep of being able to push, because we're getting later in the season. So, you know, fatigue factor does kick in for everybody. If the dedication is there, it's going to be a tough day. But with the new play caller, new scheme mindset, more so leveraging plays that you know your strengths are at, Oklahoma has a chance to put up some points, but they've got to show us before anybody's truly going to believe it.
Yeah, and Ole Miss through 7 games, they've given up 1 rushing touchdown this season.
Woo!
And that was on a play that the ball carrier fumbled. It went into the end zone and it was recovered.
Oh, gosh. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's one of those type deals. That's how Ole Miss ended up losing the Kentucky game, by the way.
Fair point.
So this is a really, really interesting game. The storyline, the stuff happened on the front 7 against Oklahoma's offensive line. What do you think is the most important thing for Oklahoma? What is the most important storyline for Oklahoma going into this game?
The biggest one, and again, it's definitely going to be the offense. Can the offense keep the ball and move the ball? We have the talent there, as we talked about before. If you look at the blue chip ratio, we have the talent there. It's just on the offense, it's all young. Replacing your entire offensive line, we was hoping that at some point they could gel, but it's hard to gel whenever you've gone through 4 centers over a 3-game span to start the season because of health. You were dealing with a lot of injuries. Then you lose one of your transfer offensive linemen, Gary Hatchett. He had shoulder surgery. And that's the beginning of the season. And so now you've got guys slowly coming back and they're starting to get a little bit more healthy. But hopefully we'll start seeing some of our younger players play also. We've got a few 4-star players that are itching to get on the field. If we can get them out there, because I think they've got enough strength to try to cause problems for the defensive line. Stopping the defensive line is not going to be that easy because you all have, like I said, a very good one. I give those props. But if we can get our young guys in there that are ready to really start hitting people and they're willing to, we could probably slow down some things just enough to get certain plays off. Running the ball has been a problem. So the offensive storyline is everything. Storyline for this team is literally what is the offense going to do? If the offense can try to move the ball, I think we'll be fine. I think for Ole Miss, the big thing is going to be for you all is just trying to shut Oklahoma out. If you can get a 0 on there, Day's just, a very easy walk in the park.
Yep. Potentially. I think Ole Miss has a good chance to do this. I think Oklahoma is going to score in this game. I don't think Ole Miss is going to get a 0 in this game. And that is because I think that Ole Miss has the propensity to bust. And
makes sense.
There's a problem with, like the Kentucky game was the problem with drive-saving penalties. One of the touchdown drives for Kentucky had 4 pass interference penalties that happened on 3rd down. It was a disaster, and anything that could go wrong did go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see exactly how that goes. Anyway, thanks for watching the podcast. on Locked On Ole Miss, Locked On Sooners. When we come back, we will talk about paths to victory for both teams and give our score predictions. Stick around. Sports fans, if you haven't tried Prize Picks, now's the time. Prize Picks is the best way to get real money action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. It's fast, easy, and fun, and you'll have your picks locked in within 60 seconds. Right now, you can win up to 100 times your money by nailing just 4 correct picks. And don't worry, if one of your picks does not hit, there's flex play, so you can still cash out and double your money. So what makes Prize Picks even better is that their injury insurance policy exists. If one of your players leaves in the first half and doesn't return, your lineup stays alive. No more ruined bets because of unexpected injuries. Sign up today at Prize Picks and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 off instantly when you play just $5. That's right. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So what are you waiting for? Run your game on Prize Picks and turn your sports knowledge into real cash today. All right, we are back in Thunderdome. Steven Willis from Locked On Ole Miss, Jay Smith from Locked On Sooners. We are talking about the second ever meeting between the Oklahoma Sooners and the Ole Miss Rebels. And Jay, I do want to apologize to all Oklahoma fans because there's no reason this should be an 11 o'clock kickoff. They are not going to get the full disclosure of what the Grove is and what Ole Miss is. They're going to walk away and say, hey, that was great, but I was kind of disappointed. It's like, yeah, it was 11 a.m. If you guys had a 2:30 kickoff or even a 6:30 kickoff, that place would be completely different. But I think your fans should enjoy it. Just know that if you can't get into the stadium, go down to the square. That's a good place to watch what's going on. And there's several restaurants in and around the square where people can eat. So that's what you should look at as well.
Okay, I'm going to be in town. I actually fly into Memphis on Thursday night, so I'll be out there in the Oxford area walking around, checking out what the Grove looks like and everything. I agree with you.
Ajax Diner.
Okay, Ajax Diner. Noted. Written it down. But I agree with you. 11 o'clock kickoff is just so unfortunate. I was hoping that it would have been, the 2:30, 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central, or even later. I kind of wonder if they'll be willing to trade the game and move it to Norman instead so that we can really experience what Oxford looks like next season when we expect people to actually be healthy and ready to play. But no, it's gonna be fun to get out there and see another large stadium in the SEC. The Auburn environment was great. I don't think there's any type of hexes or voodoo going on at Oxford, is there?
No, it's just an old stadium. The stadium was built in like 1911.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Like old stadiums.
Yeah. So the sidelines, especially the side stanchions, that's the old part. The south end zone is the house that Eli built. So that's what that expansion was. And the one at the north end zone where the big video board is going to be is where they sit the students. And that was built like 6-7 years ago.
Okay, good. So we'll be able to see some old and new all combined. So on that, as Oklahoma comes in here, there's really one path to victory in this game. Turnovers. We need to force as many turnovers as possible and minimize ours. Like I said, this defense has been very opportunistic. We've done well in causing turnovers, and we do really good at not allowing too many big plays, except for when we get too aggressive, then we're susceptible to them because we have an aggression problem sometimes. But usually that aggression has helped us to actually, that's why we got 25 sacks this season. We're, third in the country in that. We do a good job of getting the pressure and forcing the quarterback to throw passes they don't want to or throw passes that get tipped. For us, it's if we can win the turnover battle, we have a good chance of keeping the score very, very low. Now, we can do big plays. Like I said, we've got very fast wide receivers. We just got to stop you all from doing your big plays, get pressure, get those 3 and outs on a regular basis, and then hopefully try to get 1 or 2 big plays out of our guys, either a big run or some big catches that can help us to get, in field goal range or, get a score or 2. I hope this score is lower than the score you guys had against Kentucky. That would probably help us a lot.
Yeah, and honestly, if the 3 turnovers against South Carolina happened, like I said, it was 14-9. It was right in the wheelhouse of what Oklahoma would have been looking for, but that game was ended because of what happened. Ole Miss's path to victory is getting the offense back on track. The offense hasn't looked right the first 3 games of the SEC. This is Lane Kiffin coming off of a bye week. This is Lane Kiffin going to respect the defense that he's going against. I think you're going to see something similar to what Ole Miss put on the field against Penn State. I think you're going to see our Texas A&M or even LSU a year ago, because he respected those defense and their ability to get to the quarterback. He respects the Oklahoma defense, and that means the offense is going to be completely unlocked. You're going to see Caden Prieskorn get used in the middle of the field. You're going to see Juice Wells doing things differently than just running 40-yard go routes. All of that's going to happen. They're going to figure out a way to creatively do that. And when you add a running game that should be starting to round into form a little bit with the addition of Bentley and Parrish, I think this offense is going to be tough to deal with. And as good as Oklahoma's defense is, if Ole Miss doesn't turn over the ball, Ole Miss's defense is good enough to where they can prevent Oklahoma from doing that same thing. So like you said, 17 points, the game might be over. I think Brent Venables really wants to muck up the proceedings. He wants this to get very slow. The tendency for Joe John Finley is the same thing, running tempo on offense. They can't do that. I expect Oklahoma to play very slow. They're very much going to be Vandy this weekend. And if that happens, they have a shot. But if you come out and you see Oklahoma running tempo, just go ahead and mark off Ole Miss is going to cover.
Yeah, if that happens, it's over. It's a done deal. And I'm hoping that we don't run into any type of we don't do a bunch of tempo. I do sense we will have some going because, like you said, that is part of the playbook and a part of the philosophy they have. But only you probably
culture,
only
really.
Right. It's part of the culture, really. It truly is. It's been embedded in that since Levy came, 2 years ago when Brent Venables took the job initially in 2022.
Kevin Wilson basically brought that into the Oklahoma system 20 years ago.
He did. That was one of his big things. And it's funny even thinking about that. Kevin Wilson, now coach at Tulsa, when we played Tulsa last, that was the conversations was about how him and Brent Venables used to battle it out with those 2 different offenses and those tempos, and how Brent Venables, their focus was to stop it as much as possible. And we all know that Lane Kiffin has an offense that is known for really bending defenses. And as you said, the offense has kind of struggled going into the SEC. And so for Oklahoma, we've got to hope that continues. For you all, getting it back on track is really going to be a saving grace. But if we can slow that down, because Jaxson Dart's been one of the top quarterbacks in the country right now, especially statistically. Trey Harris is everything. How is he health-wise? I know that has been a question over the last couple of weeks.
Nobody's going to know until warm-ups on Saturday, but the rumor is that he's probably going to try and give it a go.
Okay. So for us, it's going to be all about slowing that down, not allowing that.
And by the way, Caleb Cunningham is going to be on campus, a big 5-star visitor.
I know Caleb Cunningham.
Yes.
Awesome.
And usually when that happens, Lane Kiffin likes to throw the ball deep to Trey Harris.
I can see that because that's you got to show the guy what's the possibility, because he's right now committed to Alabama.
Yes,
always ABR, always be recruiting or always be closing. We can do both of them, but yes, that makes sense. So for us, it's preparation for deep passes, a lot of shots. As long as we can keep the blitzes going and get the hits, hopefully slow some of that down.
All right. So what do you got for a score prediction?
Being completely transparent, I'm seeing a 20-7 game. I think Ole Miss wins that one.
I'm going to go with 34-10. And like I said, it's not denigrating anything program related for all your fans that might be watching. Because whenever Ole Miss goes to the Palace on the Plains next year, and we know that it could be a completely different story, but this year it just doesn't match up. But thank you very much, Jay, for joining me. This was a whole bunch of fun. What have you got going on this weekend, man?
I'll be there in Oxford enjoying the festivities and getting to see another SEC stadium, which is exciting. So we're happy to be here, and we're excited to, rebound ourselves hopefully over the next few weeks to where, when next season starts, we get back to old Oklahoma of old.
All right. Well, take care, bud, and safe travels to Oxford, man.
Thanks a bunch. Appreciate you having me.
Listen, thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the #1 Ole Miss podcast out there. And your support means the world to us. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in college football. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And exciting news, you can become a Locked On Ole Miss Insider. The best and easiest way to stay updated on all things Ole Miss is our texting program. We send you notifications on anything relevant without the hassle of a message board filled with trolls. Enjoy a 14-day free trial and experience the future of college sports coverage. And also check us out on the 24+ ABC Memphis app. Today, we're going to be on the 24th Floor Sports Show, airing on that. They're also going to send us the clip, and we're going to put it on the YouTube channel as well. Anyway, for those of you watching on YouTube, we will send you to Locked On College Sports Now. Hotty toddy.